Ever since his creation as a Marvel Comics superhero in 1962 by Stan Lee, Thor has taken part in some of the most epic stories to ever come to life on the comic book page. While Lee, Jack Kirby, and more helped bring Thor to vivid life and create the many elements that would forever define the Norse god hero, there is one creator whose time on Thor stands above the rest: Walt Simonson. As both writer and artist, Simonson crafted an epic tale for Thor, one that spanned from 1983 to 1987, covering 44 issues in a 4-issue miniseries. In his time as the creative force behind the Mighty Thor, Simonson pushed the Asgardian Avenger in exciting new directions. Not only did he create a massive storyline that spanned many minor arcs that encapsulated a wide variety of tones and genres, but he created new wrinkles in the Thor mythos which have heavily informed the decades of comic book stories that have followed. In the years since, writers and artists have followed in Simonson's steps, but few have been able to reach the dizzying heights to which he sent the God of Thunder during his run. From the cosmic to the apocalyptic to the comedic, Simonson's Thor ran the gamut of what could be done with a comic book hero. Together, they formed one colossal, incredibly satisfying story worthy of the character's mythological origins. Through the use of smaller story arcs that push forward many different continuing narrative threads, Simonson created a vast arc that works in smaller pieces while being even greater when taken as a whole. As the Asgardian hero takes part in one adventure, Simonson would often slowly lay the groundwork for events that wouldn't occur for potentially dozens of issues. In doing so, the writer could tackle a variety of stories that increased in both scope and absurdity, while still keeping readers invested and interested. Simonson cites Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's premiere run on Thor as the greatest influence upon his run, as well as the works of Scrooge McDuck cartoonist Carl Barks. Perhaps the most powerful lesson I learned from those comics was that if you kept a straight face, you could do anything, said Simonson. The wildest stories were possible if you invited the readers to come along on the journey without breaking faith with them. No nudges in the ribs or sly winks to let them know we were all in on the joke, that we were all too hip for our own good. The essence of a good story is to bind the reader with a spell broken only at the story's conclusion, and perhaps not even then. From the very start in Thor number 337, Simonson decided to shake things up in a major way. Ever since his beginnings in Marvel Comics, Thor shared a body with Donald Blake, a meek and mild human alter ego who would transform into Thor when he struck his wooden cane on the ground, changing the cane into the mystical hammer Mjolnir at the same time. Within his first arc, Thor encounters the strange alien Beta Ray Bill, who bests the hero in combat and is shockingly proven to be worthy of lifting the enchanted hammer, a feat never done in comics before this point. Through their struggle, Bill is given his own hammer, and the Donald Blake persona is removed from Thor, making him into the God of Thunder 24/7. It was a smart move. Simonson's coming stories had no time for small human drama. This was to be an epic tale from start to finish. The addition of Beta Ray Bill, who would return multiple times throughout the author's run on the series, also allowed for Thor to have cosmic adventures that blended both high fantasy and science fiction. While Thor being pulled through the cosmos by his trusty mystical goats Tooth Gnasher and Tooth Grinder may be a ridiculous image in and of itself, the strength of Simonson's storytelling capabilities means that readers can accept this as a natural part of the narrative. Each issue strikes a wonderful balance between the current main plot and the many seeds being laid for future developments. Enemies old, new, and transformed all target Thor at one point or another, causing devastating setbacks for the Avenger and threatening the future of Asgard and even the entire universe. Like the stories, Thor himself is an embodiment of mythic heroism here. While the Norse god hero may lack the pathos of someone like Batman or the relatability of a character like Spider-Man, Simonson gives his lead character plenty of charm, wit, and charisma. This is a hero who can battle universe-threatening demons one minute and risk everything to save the lives of a single family the next. Simonson makes Thor equally invested in all sorts of needs. He also really puts the character through the ringer, testing him mentally, physically, and spiritually from the very start. That means the reader cares about Thor from the beginning, and can care about the wide variety of stories that are told over the course of more than 40 issues. But where would a classic Thor story be without his devilish brother Loki? The God of Mischief plays a vital role throughout these many issues. While his machinations create many of the story's most dire situations, he is not always the cackling mastermind. In fact, when faced with the universe-shattering threat of the fire demon Surtur, Loki even joins forces with Thor and Odin, the two people he despises the most. These developments make him into a far more dynamic and interesting character than he would be as a straight villain. Outside of Thor and Loki, Simonson provides satisfying story arcs for multiple side characters who play various roles throughout his epic run. These include Asgardian warrior Sif, who is looking for new purpose in her life, the villain Scourge, who finds his loyalties and beliefs tested when all hope seems lost, Baldur, who is traumatized after returning from the dead and even given his own miniseries by Simonson, and Underworld Queen Hela, who becomes the biggest threat to Thor as the series progresses. By pitting the Thunder God against numerous classic and new foes, these dozens of issues feature many of the moments that have become synonymous with Thor. Some are stunning, some are tragic, and others are quite outlandish, but they all find the God of Thunder in fine form. The Birth of Beta Ray Bill introduces readers to an alien character who may look like a villain at first glance, but is quickly proven to be a true hero with a good heart. His nobility and heroic nature stand in stark contrast to his ugly form. In fact, Simonson set out to create a hero who proved that looks did not need to coincide with heart. As the encapsulation of the writer's blend of sci-fi and fantasy, Bill stands as one of the most memorable creations from this run on the Mighty Thor. In Ragnarok and Roll, a gigantic fire demon from the realm of Muspelheim, Surtur, who had been previously featured in Thor's ongoing stories, is given his most defining tale. Armed with the magical blade Twilight and backed by a vast array of demons, Surtur seeks to destroy Asgard and Midgard in one fell swoop. But it's the team of Odin, Thor, and Loki who stand in his way of universal annihilation. The massive scope and sacrifice that come with this story set in motion everything that follows. During the escape from Hell, Thor and a company of Asgardian soldiers venture into the realm of the dead to rescue a legion of souls who have been captured by Hela, but they're surrounded by an evil army and must battle their way both in and out. It all culminates with a noble sacrifice at the Bridge of Gallerbrew, one of the series' most defining moments. But not everyone escapes unharmed. Thor is viciously slashed across the face by Hela, causing him to cover his disgusting wounds with a mask, and eventually a beard, leading to a new look for the once clean-shaven Avenger. It's a small change in appearance, but one that reflects the writer's willingness to alter his hero. In Frog of Thunder, Loki plays a strange trick on Thor, turning him into a powerless frog. The Thunder God retains his intelligence and joins forces with the frogs of New York City's Central Park to defeat an army of rats. But when Thor is able to lift Mjolnir, he's turned into a giant, all-powerful frog instead of his old self. It may be strange, but this fairy tale take on Thor is easily one of his most unique and all-around fun stories. There are plenty more amazing pieces that form this massive story. Reading them as one whole tale easily makes Simonson's run on Thor into one of comic history's most satisfying arcs. Being that Thor is simultaneously a superhero, mythic god, and interdimensional traveler, the hero can fit in well with many different types of stories. Simonson deftly uses this throughout his run, mixing all three elements into something that fits into these categories while also being its own thing. As Thor and his allies fight foes across the 9 realms, brilliant and dazzling worlds spring to life, with characters spouting language that would feel just as home in an ancient play. This is truly epic stuff, even if the very wordy nature of Simonson's scripts feels far different from today's leaner and faster comic books. Comic book art during the 1980s was a very mixed bag. While some of the medium's greatest artists rose to prominence in the decade, there was also a large share of art that started out decently and has since aged poorly. Thankfully, Simonson's work on Thor has stayed looking great. The way that energy streams out of characters and explodes across the page make gigantic battles feel even more powerful. While Sal Buscema would take over as main series artist during the second half of Simonson's run, the creative force of the writer continued to influence the look and feel of the comic. While the writer needed Buscema to help carry the increasingly heavy load of creating the comic, Simonson would return to create the layouts for climactic issue number 380. While the Mighty Thor's grand tale is filled with huge moments, massive fights, and spectacular imagery, its finale dwarfs them all. The plans against Thor concocted by both Loki and Hela have resulted in the World Serpent being unleashed. This enormous dragon is not only powerful enough to swallow the earth, but is destined to kill Thor in combat, as he is destroyed in turn by the God of Thunder. However, Thor has been cursed by Hela for his actions against her. His body has become brittle, causing bones to break under blows that he would normally withstand easily and without the ability to be healed. Even worse, Thor has been cursed with the inability to die. It's a devious plot by Hela to turn Thor into a wreck, suffering incalculable pain for all eternity. Now, faced with the enormous World Serpent, Thor fights his greatest enemy across the earth, which has been frozen in time for their epic encounter. While the God of Thunder has equipped himself with armor to prevent further injury, the serpent is far too powerful for its defenses. Playing out in full-page spreads, Thor uses his wits and mighty Mjolnir to frustrate his enemy, but Thor sacrifices everything in one supersonic mid-air attack, obliterating the world serpent while also completely destroying his own body. It's a shocking but necessary culmination for Thor, who Simonson showed to be consistently self-sacrificing and noble. But this isn't the end for the God of Thunder. Through ingenuity and wit that may surprise casual Thor fans, the hero uses his intelligence to outsmart the many enemies stacked against him. It's appropriate that the issue featuring this turnabout is called Ye Olde Shell Game, since it sees Thor playing tricks on the typical tricksters. Appropriately, it all boils down to a scene where Loki gets some well-deserved comeuppance. Because Simonson so deftly balanced character with narrative, the stakes of his run on Thor feel like they have simultaneously been a blockbuster journey and a deconstruction of the God of Thunder himself. With so many iconic moments and unforgettable stories, it's no wonder that Simonson's time on the Mighty Thor has continued to influence both decades of comics that came after and the films centered on the character. Among the pantheon of great Thor stories, it's Simonson's that will remain the timeless epic for the God of Thunder.